Okay, my name is Jim. I'm 59 years old. I'm a student of the work of history, former lawyer, but I can hardly work a computer. Give me ones if you're receiving this transmission. I'm going to talk today about the subconscious mind. Good, Phil's got me, Eagle's got me. As far as I know from, grammar school history, the concept of the subconscious mind is pretty new to about the 20th century. Pagans didn't quite have it, unless it's a very esoteric subject that I'm not familiar with in mythology. Maybe their gods represented subconscious forces. Christians didn't have it. Rene Descartes, an Enlightenment philosopher and mathematician, thought that human was basically well, entirely a rational soul and intellect in an animal body. That's what the roots of our consciousness are, as far as our theory. That, animals are just scenery. They have nothing going on in their heads. But a human being is a soul in an animal, a monkey and a chimpanzee with an animation of a God-responsible soul. And except for goofy myths about incubus and succubus, which were demons thought to possess the mind or to sexually trespass on the body during the Middle Ages, the concept of a subconscious mind begins with, roughly, Sigmund Freud, who talked about the id and an ego and a superego. Now, the superego functions. The ego is our everyday functioning mentality. The id was the source of our drives, our repressed things, the stuff the Catholic Church didn't like, sexuality, etc. I'm not going to talk about sex, but if no one has read Herbert Marcuse's Eros and Civilization, then, you're a little handicapped. Now, this subconscious mind was also dealt with by another fellow named George Groddick. He was a German doctor, the founder of psychosomatic medicine, Groddeck. George Groddick said that there is something in a human being he called the it. In German, it's das Ich, or, yeah, what is it? Oh, never mind. Forget my German. Anyway, this it controls our bodies. This it has its own ideas of what we're doing. This it can make us sick or well. This is going to correspond roughly to Gurdjieff's essence. Now, Carl Jung, was a more metaphysical, one of those psychoanalysts at the turn of the century. Someone's flashing a lot of diagrams and links. That's okay. I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to go to them now. But what we have here is what looks to me like a revolutionary theory in human thought about what we are. Instead of being a soul animating a body, or as Kessler said, a ghost in a machine, our brain had three brains. A higher brain, sometimes called the super soul, the oversoul, the superconscious mind. Then there's the ordinary, everyday, functioning, walking, talking, thinking. Here I am, Jim Probe. Ego in the middle. Julian Jaynes, I read about him too. The bicameral mind. He influenced John Lennon for a while. So I'm familiar, but the bicameral mind, actually, it turns out that has to do, Steve, with the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain, which are different ideas. That being, the left hemisphere is logical thinking, the right hemisphere the source of language, and according to Jaynes, back in history, ancient people heard language for the first time in their own brain, and they thought gods were speaking to them. It was their own brain that they had not become conscious of. In fact, he thinks that about 7 to 10,000 years ago, human beings were not conscious. So the origin of human everyday consciousness, like we have now, started basically with the introduction of the alphabet, recorded history, and things that are expressed in Leonard Shlain's Alphabet versus the Goddess. In other words, a mere 10,000 years ago, human beings would be things that we could physically recognize but never communicate with. Anyway, back up to the 20th century, we've got this new idea coming into Christian culture, and the church is disappearing, and someone is saying it's a lot more complicated than a soul in a monkey. And they talked about the subconscious mind. The first time I heard about it was in a little book called Science of Mind, and I heard about, if you think better, your life will be better. A friend of mine in high school, freshman year, gave me a book that was popular at the time, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And facing all the problems of adolescence, I figured I'd better read this book because I'm not happy with who I am, and I better change, and I don't know how to change. So I heard that to change, I just have to think better with my logical mind, which will influence the subconscious mind. In other words, if I believe that I'm tall, dark, and handsome, I will be tall, dark, and handsome. Well, that didn't work out so well. He seemed to think that everything we are, from our wealth to our social life, is a product of our thinking, ordinary ego thinking, because ego thinking goes to the subconscious. Let me repeat that. The idea is, if I'm an optimistic person, then I'm probably successful, or undoubtedly successful. Yeah, the causation goes from thoughts to real world. If I think I'm rich, then I will be rich. Ordinary materialist logic says, if I open my eyes and I have a lot of money, then, I think I'm rich. So this idea that the idealists had, and still have today in Rhonda Byrne's book, The Secret, is that anyone can think their way into a better life. Now, one extreme idea of this was exemplified, I bought these things to try to quit drinking 15 or 20 years ago. They were called subliminal message tapes. What happens is someone is giving you a message that you don't know what it is. It's covered over with music, nice sounding music, natural sounds like waterfalls, rumblings of volcanoes, whatever. But something is telling you whatever you want to, get. You're a better golfer. Your swing is beautiful. You're very sociable, outgoing. You're terrific. You're making money. Your body is healthy. It reminds me of Tarkis's mental imagery about killing cancer or infections with mental imagery. And so this was the idea I got, and I read a few books on it, of how I can influence my subconscious mind just by thinking better. And repetition is the mother of learning. I have to convince my conscious, and then the subconscious may follow. And so I just got to keep thinking. This, leads to things like hypnotism, and if someone just tells me I hate to smoke, then I will, in fact, start hating to smoke. That's the big theory. Anyway, what I'd like to do now, though, since I may have to digress, I'm going to read Gurdjieff's take on all this, not from BT, but I have a nice book called The Guide and Index to G.I. Gurdjieff's Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. It's 400 some pages. It looks like a dictionary, but instead of defining the words, what it does is it gives quotations from BT and page numbers so that you can see what Gurdjieff said about it.